April is International Jazz Month, and South Africa is home to some of the most legendary jazz icons from the likes of Hugh Masekela, Abdullah Ibrahim, and Mama Miriam Makeba. But over the years, a new breed of jazz icons has been born, and one of the most notable is a composer, pianist, and philanthropist all the way from Kwazulu Natal. His name is Nduduzo Makhathini, and if you still don't know who I'm speaking about, maybe this will jog your memory. As I mentioned earlier, it is International Jazz Month, and of course we could not begin or at least end the month without speaking to one of South Africa's most iconic composers, pianist, and a philanthropist. He hails from Kwazulu Natal, and his name is Nduduzo Makhathini. Thank you so much for joining us, Sokope. We really appreciate having you on the show today.
Thank you for having me. It's truly an honor to be here.
So it's International Jazz Month. Let's start with the easy stuff. What does jazz mean to you?
Well, I don't think that's an entirely easy question, but I could attempt. For me, it's sensibility that is anchored in a rather not so beautiful story of displacement, and like kind of trying to locate identities through memory. And you know, if we look at it in South Africa, it has played that role of reminding us about who we are in this serious project of the erasure and this amnesia that engulfs young people. So I think it has a lot to do with identities and the refusal to forget who we are.
You are a man from Kwazulu Natal. Tell me, how does a man from KZN come into the jazz space? Is this something we knew from a young age that definitely, you know, some artists speak of stories where they grew up listening to jazz music.
Sure.
How did you find that passion for jazz music?
Yeah, well, I truly believe that just the whole project of being in the world is based on a calling, ubizo. And so there are things that are intrinsic within that calling that you cannot escape. And I think jazz is one of them. And how I come to jazz was really by chance, because I went to study music, not jazz. And it was my first encounter with this genre. But later again, I would realize that it was a beautiful kind of site to allow me the kind of expressions that I wanted as an artist, particularly as an artist that is also performing healing rituals within the sound. So I needed a genre that has the kind of flexibility to allow all of these things that I bring when I think about music. And jazz seemed to be the practice that is based on improvisation, and therefore really allowing for this creation of an experience. I wanted to co-create something in the world. I wanted to design the kind of world I want to see around myself. And I think jazz, particularly as an improvised music, allows that design aspect, and that's really what I'm anchored in.
You mentioned two things in your response. One, the calling, and two, being a scholar to the music. But we'll get to the scholar part. Let's speak about the calling. You seem like a very spiritual man. It even transcends in your music.
Yeah.
Do you think that is an accurate description of who you are?
Yeah.
And what makes you the kind of person that you are?
Yeah. I think the biggest challenge was when spirituality was made an exclusive paradigm. And of course, this was some of the challenges of, you know, colonial epistemologies that would challenge our religiosities to a point where we separated modes of spiritualism and ways of being. What I'm trying to say is that these are things that come as a package. When we think specifically about African anthology, we speak a lot about this idea of umoya. And umoya really lives in all things. I have been investigating this notion of Ndu as vital force, as the spirit essence. So when we think about, for instance, the Zulu origin story of Dabuga Ohlangene, this breaking from an existing spirit, a pre-existent spirit. So I think it's something that we can't really escape. It's inevitable for human beings to be spiritual. So for me, it's further anchored in the calling Yobungoma, which is something that I've been exploring with regards to how it speaks to notions of being an improviser and being a jazz musician, but what does it mean to use the lens of divining or the throwing of the bones as a way of blurring the lines between improvised music and modalities of spirituality.
You recently obtained your PhD in music from the University of Stellenbosch. Is this something that you have, been working towards for a long time? And how was the feeling of just completing your thesis and having this process sort of come to an end, or is it still ongoing?
Well, any research project opens with a question, but I have learned over the years that it also closes with another question. So in that way, it refuses the end. I'm thankful that I could package at least maybe 2% of what I'm thinking to share in that kind of register, which is academic, which is theoretical, includes methodologies, and it could make it maybe in that way into curriculum. It could inform the ways in which people think about what does it mean to center the practice as a way of knowing, as opposed to a practice as something that we always are kind of reflecting on. But what does it mean for that very practice to be a way of knowing? And within that, I looked into also Bantu cosmologies, which I call Ndu cosmology, which was a way of decentering from this heavy hegemony of the West that dictates how we know, what we know, and how we live in the world. So I think for me, in as much as this was a PhD project, but I think it's just a pursuit in my own journey of being an artist and someone who is obsessed with inquiry. So I don't see it as the end. It does amplify my voice in academic scholarship, which is important for Black scholars, particularly in music, because there is a shortage of that kind of scholarship.
So Nkope, you are on your way to Europe. Actually, you're leaving today, and you're going on tour. Which cities are you going to be visiting, and what are you planning for your international audience?
Wow, thank you. The cities I know I will do injustice, but I know that I'll be going to, I'm going to Amsterdam, I'm going to London, I'm going to some places in Italy, some places in Spain. I am going to Berlin in Germany. I think I'm going too many places. It's a very wide kind of European tour. I'm excited for it. It does a very important intervention of looking at transatlantic knowledge and how we are told that Brazil and South America at one point used to be part of the continent, Africa. And over thousands and thousands of years, it shifted because of the ocean. So what does it mean to kind of remember collectively? So I'm collaborating with a mandolin player, one of the greatest masters of the mandolin traditions in Brazil. His name is Hamilton de Hollander, really special. And I'm excited to present this. It's a duet. It features some of my music and how we reimagine that for a smaller configuration, but it also features choro, which is a very traditional style of Brazilian musical traditions. I'm filled with excitement. It's great to go on tour again.
Now, this is obviously not the first time you're touring Europe, and I mean, I'm sure you've been to many other places. The audiences can't be the same, right?
Yeah.
But music is known as a universal language,
Sure.
but obviously people are going to receive it in a different way.
Sure.
I want you to tell me, you know how South Africans are, we like to dance, we will get up and pop with you. Let's make a comparison, for instance, of you playing at the Grahamstown Arts Festival and playing in New Orleans. Well, what is the difference in audience there, and what have been some of your observations in your tours, especially when you go to other countries?
Well, it's I like the juxtaposition of you're making of New Orleans, because they will be directly similar.
Oh.
Yeah, the traditions. New Orleans happens to be one of the places where some of the most ancient traditions of African peoples still hold. But of course, when we think about Europe, like the kind of more reserved audience, I think there's a place for all of these ways of listening. I believe it's an aesthetic thing. It's related to cultural nuances of how people come to know music. And for me, it's always great to walk into the room and figure out a new way of sharing, figure out a new way of telling this story. And part of what shapes the new way is these unexpected responses that the audience would kind of push forward during a performance. So it's exciting. There are places that I've taught a lot in Europe where I kind of have an idea of how the audience will be, but I'm going to Riga, I think, for the first time. So I don't know how the audience, behaves there, but there's always this collective memory that chases all the sapient kind of knowledge of just being a human. There's something deep that remembers our collective humanity.
How do you manage to, make sure you have, because I've seen even on your socials, you do your music, but you make time for your family at all costs. We see you posting your beautiful daughters and your wife.
Yeah.
How have they come together to sort of be the support structure you need to reach your goals?
Thank you so much. I think none of what I'm doing would be possible without that support. And it is my hope that if they are sat down on an interview like this, they would also say the same about how I show up for them, in their respective itinerary. As you would know, my wife is, and this is not biased in any way, one of my favorite singers in the world, with no fear of being biased.
This is Nomagugu, this one is a keeper.
Yeah, so I think again, this is another way of how the artistic knowledge could inform a way of keeping a family together. So I think we rely so much on this artistic kind of place where we allow each other to grow and manifest our own dreams in various ways. So, everyone is musical in my family, because I come from a very musical family. My mom, Nomajerusalema, just put out her debut, so it's a serious thing. My mother-in-law, Umabtelezi, was also a singer, and I remember every time she would come home, she would say to me, when and she would sing like a njilo or something, like in that serious jazzy tone, just proving that the genetics of my kids, the musical genes, are not only coming from my side, but deeply from Omakuku's side too. So I think it's a beautiful thing. It's just about a black family is a very important structure that has been challenged a lot, and it keeps being challenged. So in every moment possible to celebrate a black home, I think is something that we should really take seriously. And I'm thankful to be in a family where I'm constantly being remade. I'm reconstructed. The panel beat there is like, you have to change that. It's a beautiful thing to have, to go back to a mirror that would reflect and show you all the goods and bads, and you have a chance to recompose yourself.
Still speaking about family, I'd like us to just touch a bit on the jazz family, the jazz fraternity. You know, there are notable differences. Like, let's make an example again. I like making these kind of examples. With genres like hip hop, for instance, it's difficult for hip hop artists to come together because, you know, there's the so-called beefs, and, you know, I can't be seen working with such and such.
On this side is chicken. We love chicken.
Tell me about that. Please tell me about the brotherhood. In fact, you are here with a brother, a jazz brother again.
Maybe he can come and just say hi. No. This is one of the most exciting saxophone players we have in this country. He comes from a deep lineage as well of Nguni systems that he is very deliberate about bringing into his being, bringing into his sound, and someone I love a lot, and he appears on a lot of my records, and beyond that, he's a good brother of mine, and I always find an excuse to play with him. And the excuse is the love. Yes,
this is what I want to get to, because with the jazz, sort of within the jazz family, it looks like it doesn't matter whether you're young, whether you are old, whether you're established, or you're still coming up. Somehow, jazz musicians are always up to work with each other. How does that work?
Well, I think a lot of it plays into the African memory again. There is a sense in which we are brought up in these ways. There is always an uncle that looks out for you. There is an aunt that looks out for you. I think jazz doesn't really deviate from these practices. So it becomes a family in a true sense. I was brought up by the great Mambusi Mhlongo, Babuzim Ngawana, Babu Pegim Selegu, you know, and that is just how jazz is, you know. I remember when I played with Ngawana, I think the first recording, maybe I was like 21, 20, maybe 22, somewhere there. And I don't think I really deserved to be in the band, but through that energy channel, I was able to be at my best. And this is what jazz does. And of course, it's important to mention that those years were shared with a very close friend, Mr. Anders Gade, who's just recently put out a classic called Umakulu. And again, you can see just by the title, this is memories. He speaks about Ngahun River, he speaks about Mdanzane and stuff. You can see how jazz does not escape home. It does not escape traditions. I could name so many people that are important for this music. I mean, there's a friend of mine, Mbuso Khoza, who comes from another angle and inform like a serious, robust reimagination of jazz and how jazz succumbs to his Zuluness, succumbs to Amahubo. You know, there is Ndabo Zulu, there is Omagugu, there is Zoe Modicha. You know, we are really just a big family, and I know I'm leaving a lot of names out, but you know, they know I love them.
Just going forward, what are some of your hopes and your dreams? Be it for the fraternity, the music fraternity, be it just for yourself, be it for your spirituality. Just going forward, what is next for Mr. Nduduzo Makhathini?
Well, thank you for this question. It's a difficult one to answer, but I definitely believe in endlessness. I believe that there shouldn't be a fixed destination, because everything is in this cyclical mode. And like I said earlier on, there is Ubizo that brings you to the world, but also there is a calling that takes you out of the world. And I think my journey in music is really informed by this coming and going. So if my songs could outlive me, I think that would be one of the most profound things. So I think that's one maybe dream that I have. And I've always said that if someday I could play a concert and I disappear, that would be so amazing.
Sankope, thank you so much for your time. All the best for your Euro tour, and congratulations once again on your PhD.
Thank you so much. Magwande.